Yeah, it's like so Dr. Aravind is here with us, and I'm really, really glad that you accepted this invitation. I think I've known you for a while, for a long time, and whenever I've met you, I've found this really warmth presence you have. So we are just building this community of schizophrenia support, and we are creating more conversations around it, and we also have a community where people with schizophrenia can feel safe, and this conversation is part of that flow. And I think having you is more like adding a perspective to it, which is very alternative in terms of perhaps not so mainstream, but perhaps also very like looking at deeper issues than just what we look at surface. And yeah, and I found you like warm and empathetic, and so I'm really glad you accepted this invitation, and I'm so thankful that you're here. Yeah.
Thank you, Pankaj. Yeah, thank you for making me a part of this journey, this support group, and it's interesting how we also transform our journey and transition to different aspects, even in medical practice. Like in my case,
Mhm,
um, where I think it's destiny or whatever we want to call.
mhm,
They're bound to do certain things and take a particular path,
mhm,
and it's always a great feeling to help people. And I think being a doctor, it's the greatest pleasure that we get is when a patient says that I felt better or I felt heard. So I think it's a great journey, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
No, no,
Yeah.
yeah, I really appreciate, because when we work with lots of practitioner, that sometimes they have a lot of knowledge and they're good, but the warmth and the empathy is really missing in them, right? Like just the space to really sit and talk. So I
Yeah.
think this is something I feel you bring in, and of course, apart from that, also I think the moments of destiny, this transition you're talking about, maybe we can sort of begin and sort of your journey, like how it all started for you, and yeah.
Yeah. So when I was in eighth grade, I broke my arm while playing cricket. So my mom took me to a doctor. Then
Mhm,
he said, "Oh, there is a fracture. We need to do surgery." Unfortunately, the surgery didn't go well. The doctor said everything was fine back then, but then there was a malunion and a structural deformity.
mhm,
And with the limited resources my parents had, they took me to another hospital in a bigger hospital, city hospital, where the orthopedic surgeon said that the surgery isn't performed well, and we need to operate on your hand again.
mhm,
Um, Only later we realized that it also didn't go well. And later in life, I realized that it was just operated because it was a government hospital and they wanted a medical model to show to the surgery students. And because in the middle of the surgery, I was actually looking at these
mhm,
surgeons all around. I couldn't find the doctor who told that he will be doing the surgery, but all those students around. um, and later I had a permanent deformity of my left hand because of that two incidents. And then I was thinking that, okay, I should become a doctor, and this is a lesson how not to be in the medical profession, because there was no consent, there was no information given to me or my parents or anything like that, just taken for granted. So I decided that I'm going to become a doctor. And then I entered into medical field, the 5.5 year course of Ayurvedic medicine,
mhm,
the Indian system of medicine. And then it was interesting. I wanted to do a master's, so I got a master degree. And then I got married, had a daughter, but unfortunately, at the time of birth, she had birth asphyxia and hypoxic damage to brain,
mhm,
and she suffered from cerebral palsy because of that. So we, like any other parent on this planet, started visiting different medical professionals, neurologists, and epileptologists and neurosurgeons, discussing what's the best thing that we can do.
Mhm.
Like you said, we were only given certain things that made us more sad, like you should have done this or this should not have happened, rather than telling what is the next step,
Yeah,
or what do we do next.
like
Because
putting a
talking
bow
about
on it.
past won't make, it will not bring any change to the current situation. So I decided, okay, I'm going to explore the unconventional pathways
Mhm.
and try to better the health of my child. And I got into functional medicine. In the US, I got trained in the Functional Medicine Institute. And then I also approached this institute in Philadelphia called the Doman International Organization, who were offering a neurodevelopmental support course with an unconventional approach.
Mhm.
And then they asked me, what kind of a doctor are you? And I said, Ayurvedic doctor. They said, I have never heard of that term. It sounds very strange. And then I explained, the principles, and just like the traditional Chinese medicine or
Mhm.
the Western naturopathy, this is a indigenous system developed in India and all that stuff. So I said, okay, that's interesting. Let us try and integrate Ayurveda with some of our kids who have challenges. And this is a great platform for me to also explore and see how things work. And the director said, I'm going to give you the three toughest kids that we have who haven't made substantial progress being on the program. And if you could bring change in their physiological state, standard of living, we'll think of incorporating Ayurvedic medicine as well. So we started integrating some Ayurvedic principles, and in the next 6 months, all the three had good improvements. One of them couldn't lock the knee, and because they had mobility issues,
Mhm.
she could walk with support, then without much of a strain on the knees.
Mhm.
And the other two children, they had problems diagnosed with ADHD,
Mhm.
and they also got better. So, and then I was asked to join the team to help kids, and then I started traveling with the team to different countries, helping establish satellite clinics to help these kids.
Mhm.
So it's been like almost 9 years now, the journey, 9.5, I would say, specifically focused on neurological health, and also neuropsychiatric, I would say, overall. And it's been very challenging field, and also quite rewarding, I would say.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's really beautiful. This journey. Thanks for sharing that. It is certainly challenging and rewarding, and I would like to, hear about more about these challenges and the sense of fulfillment, perhaps the rewards. But it also feels like there are like key moments in your life that you so just reflecting back on these experiences of being fell down and getting an injury, and then your child, and that has cerebral palsy. I think both of them seems like affected you in shifted your life course. One brought you to a different kind of a doctor,
Yeah.
and certainly I could feel the sense of this invasiveness that being exposed when you're having the surgery, and it's just all a show. And perhaps, and so just going to that moment back and just trying to just exploring, like, the medical system, the mainstream is, so perhaps you carried some sense of feelings of, you know of course, sadness, but also anger towards making something as something, a disability or something that is chronic, which if would have handled much more gently and with love and affection, and probably drived you in that direction, right?
Yeah, you're right. I think it's mostly, even for me, when I had to integrate all of these things and develop a functional medicine approach, integrating the best possible things that we have to help people and families. um, there is a lot of unlearning and relearning, because as a medical student, we are it's mostly evidence based approach, and we are constantly taught to match the pill with the ill. That's what we usually say. Okay, there's a marker, you just treat. There is a seizure, even anti-seizure medication. There is something, you match it with this. So that will not help to correct the physiology, is what I felt. Because instead of thinking why in the first place we are seeing seizures in this patient, or why is there so much of depression, what actually triggered this, is everything genetic, why at a specific point in the life did this start. So going into the depths of all of these, and thinking what is the root cause, and try to figure out that. And that process is quite satisfying. It's mostly like a investigative you know
Yeah.
um, phase, where we try to look into what are the predisposing factors, what is the triggering factor, what is mediating this process, ongoing process. That is lacking. And even when I communicate with many of conventional practitioners, they have this sort of tunnel vision about, okay, so even if you try and show them that, okay, I can show that there is problem A, B, and C. Biochemically, there is a problem because of which probably this is happening. And when we try to correct this, the patient is showing improvement. Most of the times we are shunned, saying, it's anecdotal, it's just a random case. And it is also tough to do randomized placebo controlled studies all the time, especially if you think of a child with special needs. No parent will like to enroll them in a control group and deny them of any intervention.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound ethical. So it's a very gray area, I would say, very challenging in terms of even generating evidence.
Mhm.
uh, but yeah, it's a journey.
Yes, that's certainly. And so, how do you, how do you work with then, let's say this child with ADHD, or that you worked with, or other, like, how do you, go in this investigative journey with someone ADHD or depression? Where is it coming from? Would you like to, share a bit
Yeah.
about, you know?
Yeah. So initially, we do a comprehensive history taking. It's not just like, what's the perinatal history? Was there a developmental delay? Not just that. So it's a very extensive history taking initially that we do to get started and see what could be the first step that we have to take. Because in functional medicine, we see every disease as a multifactorial incident. For example, there can be an environmental factor, there can be a genetic factor, there can be dietary factor, there can be a gut microbiome factor, there can be infection ongoing. There are lots of things, but we need to get started with something. So if we come across a patient who has a lot of gut issues, for example, say, okay, I am also having constipation, this has been an issue for a long time. Or my stool consistency is really not good, it is, I have frequent bowel movements, something like that. So, or acid reflux, I have a lot of food sensitivities, doctor. There'll be some sort of, for example, a digestive symptom. We would start with gut health and see what's the microbiome pattern like. Are there digestive enzyme insufficiency? What's going on? Because most neurochemicals are produced in the gut by these bacteria. They are not produced in the brain, actually, many of those.
Mhm.
So has there been a disturbance in the gut microbiome? So we check that, and then we treat the microbiome diversity, enzyme insufficiency, ongoing inflammation, whatever it is. And then we see how much of an improvement we saw. And then we'll take up the next step. Let us see the environmental exposure. Is this patient living in a metropolitan city? What sort of lifestyle they have, exposure to phthalates and microplastics, or even environmental
Mhm.
triggers.
Mhm.
Or and then next try and advise changes around this. Then we go to the next phase, where we check food sensitivities. Are there any foods which we are not tolerating? It's causing ongoing inflammation.
Mhm.
And then we come to neurotransmitter balance, because neurotransmitters, maybe I would do it last, because when we check all of these and correct them, many a times we will achieve greater degree of balance in neurotransmitters. So it's like a onion, peel that we go one by one.
Year by
So
year.
yeah, get started at one point and then gradually doing more investigations and get into the depths and see
Mhm.
how things go. It requires a lot of patience, both from the patient side and the doctor, because sometimes they feel that it's over testing. This doctor is, doing advising a lot of tests. Maybe he's not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just like trial and like you're just trying, and if something works out, oh, this is good, and so, sometimes maybe the client may feel like, oh, where is it going? What's because it's just it's a very multi-factor, as you said, right? And it's also very collaboratively exploring
yeah,
together. So it's so what you're also trying to say is that there's a strong this relationship between mind and body, like when you're trying to investigate the gut health or the environmental factors on the body and or neurotransmitter, which is the last one, and genetic history. um so it seems like there's a strong relationship. You're trying to focus with the body and the mind even when you're trying to work with children or adults with psychological struggles. So for example, digestion, or how all these are related to our mind, to our mental health, is
yeah. Very good question. So I think, there is a saying in Ayurveda that we become what we eat.
Mhm.
And it's also said that food is the best medicine. And these are all, like the core principles that we follow. Because, for example, if I'm eating a lot of processed carbohydrates, my eating is not healthy, I'm resorting to fast foods, a lot of simple sugars and processed carbohydrates, my gut microbiome will eventually change. And these gut microbes, they are going to release specific neurochemicals which causes that craving, makes us eat more of what they need, and they in turn release endorphins and other chemicals to make us happy, and they keep us in this loop for a very long time. And accordingly our personality gets, molded into different ways. And for a child it becomes even more difficult, because for an adult they can, articulate and say that, I'm feeling this, or I'm in a mood for a long time. But for a child who is non-verbal, it is very difficult to even understand what the child is going through. And maybe just giving a medication, telling take a risperidone, or, just medicating them and sedating won't bring a major difference in the long run, because the microbes are the same. So I think the gut and brain connection is very much, there. It's a functional thing. We don't structurally or, brand them as a diagnostic thing,
Mhm.
but there is a very strong correlation. And even in the digestive system, there are junctions. We call it as tight junctions. And if for any reason there is a infection, gut infection, or a lot of, inflammatory foods that are eaten, or maybe even there is a gut inflammation like Crohn's disease or
Mhm.
some other problem, the junctions become leaky. Now from the diet, even if we are taking so-called healthy things like leafy green vegetables, a smoothie with a lot of spinach in it, it will lead to high amounts of oxalates getting into the system. So there are a lot of anti-nutrients in plant kingdom that
Mhm.
are there to help them preserve the nutrients, their
Mhm.
own nutrients,
Mhm.
until they germinate.
Mhm.
And when we eat it, it also affects us. It's a protective mechanism. Like, for example, phytates, lectins, oxalates. So in a gap junction, instead of sealing,
Mhm.
all of these will seep into the bloodstream, anti-nutrients and stuff. So that will go and, cause a lot more problems. We see this very commonly, more so in kids, but also even in adults with high oxalate load. There can be renal problems, there can be, fibromyalgia, there are also sleep related problems, and, many different issues. So gut health becomes a very important aspect, and until we correct the gut health, addressing any other aspect of neurological or psychological aspects, it's a futile exercise. It's only symptom management. You probably try to shut it down, but in the long run, it will come up.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like an approach which is just a management which is trying to suppress things, makes a person functional, but at the same but not addressing the deeper core issues. So it seems like when you try to address these deeper core issues, you move beyond a disease model. You just not look at sort of like did you perhaps look them as a syndrome or just a concept to understand a cluster of symptoms and but not per se disease itself, and because there's a deeper imbalance in the gut health or in the body that you're addressing. And what I also hear is that you're also saying that what may be good for someone may be very bad for another person. And also that something that is, for example, spinach may be really, I mean, growing up we just been told like we eat as much as you can, and especially growing up watching Popeye the Spinach Man, it's like you just you want it's something like an ideal food. But what I'm also hearing that having an excess of that also can cause, like you said, high oxalate, and then it can lead
Yeah.
to issues. So
Exactly. I'll give you another example. There is also a problem of everyone doing a dairy-free diet. For example, thinking that okay, dairy is inflammatory, or seed oils are inflammatory, because now people have access to a lot of information. They look at Instagram influencers or others telling things. So what they do is, okay, let me eliminate dairy. Okay, what should I do as an alternative? Let me go and take a lot of almond milk, which is extremely high in oxalates,
mhm,
next to spinach.
mhm,
So I think the right diet or a healthy diet or an anti-inflammatory diet is very subjective. It cannot be generalized, because if I have a tendency to store oxalates, or if my gut health is not good and I'm leaking a lot of oxalates into the system instead of excreting it,
mhm,
a healthy diet with a lot of leafy greens, lot of nuts and seeds is extremely bad for me. So I
mhm.
cannot call it as a healthy diet. So it is very, very subjective. We cannot say that there is a universal diet type which works for all.
Yeah. So why is that certain people have allergy or inflammation to sort of lactose diet, or with gluten? I think that's gluten-free diet, or not having certain
Yeah,
wheats or rice grains. So why people have, or with spinach, like excess of, or with soya milk, excess of allergic.
yeah,
So why
yeah,
why people have different in kinds of inflammation to different kinds of food? What, I mean, I think this
yeah,
could probably move into the how these are
yeah.
reacting to our
Yeah.
body.
So there are two main explanations that I would say. One is that our digestive system and the microbiome, they have changed with time. Like we never heard of gluten sensitivity 25, 30 years ago. It was like a textbook thing, a small paragraph you would see. Now that is a big thing. And even when I was in the US in 2014,
Mhm.
getting a vegan meal is not something that is very common. But now it's very common. Everyone say it's vegan, vegetarian, dairy free, gluten free, when labeling every food stuff.
Yeah.
So with time, our gut has changed a lot, and also there are certain genetic variants. I would say, when the cells multiply, they reproduce. Most of the times, the message that is carried, the blueprint that is carried, sometimes there can be mistakes, but the body corrects it 99% of the times. It is very good at correcting the mistakes, but there will be some degree of mistake at times,
Mhm.
and that gets carried. And that might be a gene which is coding for a specific process of how to process gluten peptides, or how to digest casein, or whatever. So when that happens, then the body is unable to process it. And when the body is unable to process it, that becomes antigenic. So the body views it as a foreign substance which is here to cause danger, and
Right.
starts to fight with it.
Mhm.
So the degree of or the amount of population who are having such problems have increased over time. The next question that comes to mind is, why is that? If everything is genetic, that is because of environmental factors.
Like
Now,
epigenetic.
what? Yes, exactly, epigenetic factors. So the kind of air we breathe, the water we drink, everything has an influence, and it definitely causes a greater degree of problems at a genetic level, biochemical level, than we actually think. I'll also give you some examples. The second aspect that I was talking about is also the quality of food. Now, because of population explosion, there was genetic engineering which emerged, and they made crops which are resilient, high yield in a very short time.
Mhm.
And that is, now, instead of having seasonal crops, we will get most of the crops
Every
the whole
all
year
year.
round. So the amount of time the plant gets to have their roots deep in the soil, absorb the nutrients, and produce things which are extremely nutritious, now that is not there. Even when it grows, it will not even have enough time. Agricultural research says that the nutrients that we used to get in fruits and vegetables and grains
Mhm.
20 years ago, is it was very dense compared to what we get right now.
Mhm.
Because we see the vegetables grow like cancerous cells, like this much big, but if you see the nutrient composition, it is not that dense like how it
Yeah.
used to be. And that is another reason why we suffer from nutritional deficiencies. And many of these nutrients, trace elements for example,
Mhm.
micronutrients, are very much needed in producing hormones and enzymes which are needed for digestion of different food components. Now, there are genetic problems, predispositions,
Mhm.
nutrient insufficiency leading to inefficient systems. So that leads to different degree of sensitivities to food.
Mhm.
And also, because of this genetically modified organisms,
Yeah.
they are engineered to resist any sort of infestation and adverse environmental effects, and just grow resilient crops. Now, it has the same effect on gut microbiome. I mean, gut microbiome tries to interact with them, they don't care. So now there is again a bit of conflict that I just do what I want, and I don't care about the microbiome. The microbiome also starts suffering because of lack of nutrition. And it also, when it stops or gets disturbed because of this, the microbial diversity is now reduced. Now, whatever organism that survives in these adversities, which are opportunistic organisms, they start to overpopulate the gut, and they will just create cravings and digest things which they want,
Mhm.
and the amount of healthy microbes start going down. So that is another reason why we are seeing so much of metabolic syndrome and many other issues.
Yeah.
um yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like, so it feels like it's like a survival mechanism for the body to adapt to this
Yeah.
foreign, very authoritative element entering into our body. So it's like a so what we see is like a dysfunctional challenge in our body, like a gut health or a metabolic issues or any kind of issue is more like a survival coping mechanism of the body. So it's also like looking at disease as a way of is a way of actually a healthy response to a very unhealthy exposure to something. Like, so like for example, I mean, somewhere in my 20s I begin to sort of realize that when we have fever, I mean, so in our culture, it's very common to just pop up, like a paracetamol and crocin and go to work. It's gone, right? But
Yeah.
then yeah, I begin to realize that how sort of like fever is like not a bad thing. It's like our body is just
Coping mechanism. Yeah.
coping mechanism to fight because and there's a lot of energy is going into it. So we feel very sick, and if we let it run its course for let's say 4 days, 5 days, and we allow it to rest, we actually come out in a way without more healthily and wholesome without having a paracetamol that suppressed certain kind of you know um
True.
so what we call so as if like so seems like the toxicity building in our body is a survival mechanism to fill up something when there is a deficiency. So when we're having this engineered food, GMOs or inside, and it's causing like a natural deficiency in us. Our body needs something to still function. So if there's no right healthy minerals or elements in our food body, so we need something to fill it up to function as a cover up, like
Yeah.
a tox. So that's when the toxin perhaps comes. So that's very interesting to see that how it's actually in the the diet where it's coming from. And it also makes me curious that as a country, or as a civilization, or as just specifically about India, like the green revolution and the fooding is more like, it seemed like a very prosperous time, that everyone can have food, it's abundant. But it seems like a very, very like a traumatic collective space.
Yeah, I mean, everything comes with a price. So there are challenges as well. And not just the green revolution. I think even with medical science, indiscriminate use of antibiotics, for example, the profound effects it has. Like you asked an amazing question of why do people suffer from food sensitivities? It has a even deeper background in medical field as well. For example, when a patient goes to a doctor and says, I have a really bad sore throat, give me something. The doctor says you need to wait for 5 days or 4 days. Just have some saline gargle, just hydrate yourself. They would say like, this doctor isn't doing his job. I'll go to a pharmacy, ask for an azithromycin or amoxicillin. Just so indiscriminate use of antibiotics
Mhm,
in, I think specifically in Indian subcontinent, it has been a profound influencer, because I do see many patients who have had such antibiotic usage,
mhm,
and that has led to the overgrowth of resistant organisms so much. And the healthy microbiome is, literally when I see them, lactobacillus bifidobacterium, it says like below detection limits, when they have to be the abundant organisms.
mhm,
So there is the gut inflammation can start, you know from all of these factors. A single course of 5 or 7 days of antibiotics just wipes out so many colonies, considerable amount of it, if not all. But then in that situation, the fungal colonies overgrow because it's not an antifungal agent that they are taking. So now the healthy microbiome tries to grow, but there is no space because it is occupied by all of these other organisms. And because of 1 to 3 days antibiotic usage by themselves, or with or without the doctor's consent, these organisms are also resistant. They don't care about many of the higher class of antibiotics. So there is also a part of negligence in from the medical part of it as well,
yes,
which, yeah.
yes. You're right. You're right. Actually, it's also with being told that or get well soon. There's no space for being sick, and so the something that, and it's just an inability to stay with something very discomforting and unease, also in a person, that okay, we don't have to quickly get rid of it. And so I think I really sort of like what's the value of a doctor if a doctor does not give a medicine, just tells you to wait and listen. And I think that's when I think the specialist in like Ayurveda or other which is not very imposing perhaps, which is very slow, and takes time to understand, or even functional medicine takes time to be curious. And because the response, because the method is not to quickly so cut off. So I was also wondering, when let's say a lot of people take antibiotics and a lot of people do, is it are they reversible, or they cause a damage that is very deep?
um, Some of it is reversible, some are not. I've seen some patients who was prescribed an antibiotic, and right from the first dose, they started getting, severe abdominal cramps and diarrhea, and they were told to continue with just a probiotic for 3 5 days,
Mhm,
and they never recovered. They are like in their 30s now, and when I do the microbiome testing, it comes up, in the same pattern, and no matter how much of healing we do, because it's some degree of damage that is so hard to even recover. And I do see even now, whenever antibiotics are prescribed. I barely see any probiotics advised, and it's many of these are very very difficult, and some toxicity caused by antibiotics are irreversible. Like there are cases where patients have lost their sense of hearing, and there are
Hmm.
skin related problems and liver damage and many of those. So it's very very difficult situation.
Yeah, that's very sad. I mean, we don't get to hear. I mean, we do know, but I don't think we get to sort of really realize the effect of it, and it's really sad. And how do you like differentiate that uh when what is coming from just the genes and what is coming from the environmental effect on the genes, the epigenetics? Is it, how do you differentiate that environment, diet has affected our inflammation, and what is we are already carrying from, like from our parents, when we call genes like some kind of intergenerational
Yeah.
passing on of or something? And
Yeah.
is, how do we know?
Yeah. So the first step in this is a thorough history, like I said. So, like a family history of neuropsychiatric problems, or a family history of sensitivity to specific foods or drugs or supplements. Those give us a hint of, okay, I think probably there is a genetic component to it, but it itself will not cause uh, full blown disease. There should be some triggers. So there'll be some event, maybe a childhood trauma, or some problem with relationships, or at some degree there'll be a strong challenge that is posed to the body and the mind. And because there was a predisposition, now the body is being really challenged. And if there are not enough of a support, epigenetic support, then probably start seeing the problem coming out, and then that gene becomes expressed and upregulated, whatever we call. So we do start seeing symptoms. And the second thing that we usually do is doing testing. So we start from maybe food sensitivity testing. There is environmental tox test. So we do those tests as the second step, and see if we see any of the components. I was wondering in my fifth and sixth year of practice, why do we do this toxicity testing and toxin testing? Now everywhere we do see, if I go to the supermarket, the vegetables and fruits look amazing. It asks, it's visually so much appealing. Oh, how can there be toxins? Why would anyone put a toxin in it? But I've started to realize that when I saw the toxicity reports, I saw a very peculiar pattern, especially with Indian patients. I saw high amounts of arsenic and lead,
Okay.
as opposed to the European and the American population, where I was seeing more of methyl mercury. So, and I was just reflecting on why is that pattern,
Yeah.
what's so different. And then I realized that because as Indians, we eat a lot of rice, especially in the middle and southern part of India, and that's a very common thing to be contaminated with lead and arsenic. While fish and seafoods,
Seafood.
like mostly, yeah, because the food chain, they have a lot of mercury toxicity that comes from there. So it is true that there are, and there is cumulative toxicity. For example, if a patient comes with a history of clinical depression, and he has problem with his methylation machinery, and he's not producing enough of antioxidant glutathione, and he moved to the US for work, and in a couple of years he started
Being better.
worsening symptoms. Now what actually changed there? You get good quality of air, good standard of living. What is the problem? Then we look at the diet. He's eating more of things which can expose him to certain types of toxins,
Mm-hmm.
and now there is a cumulative toxicity because he's not detoxifying them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there will be a lot of factors from his environment. The same with one of our um, patients. He bought a child with severe ADHD, and also there was a lot of self harm
Mm-hmm.
infliction because of that, like pinching and the blood used to ooze out from her arms because she was pinching so much.
Okay.
We did so many things, barely saw any results. We did the environmental toxin screening. We saw above detectable limits of petrochemical products. And we were shocked to see that. And we asked the patient's geographical area where they live. They live in a part of Italy where there is a petrochemical processing unit
Mhm.
in the nearby 5 or 6 miles. And then we said, oh, we do probably,
Supposed to.
we never even thought of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's very interesting. Sort of these things we don't try to address or even think of sometimes. I was wondering that I understand that the mercury perhaps is in coming in when we eating fish is perhaps coming because the water and the pond or the river is dirty because of the industrial pollution going into it. So I was wondering about the fruits in India which have lead and arsenic, why they have much more than the outside. Is it because the water we use here, or are we using a lot of pesticides and fertilizers that are so toxic, or is it
yeah, I think, a combination of all of these factors. There's incredible usage of um, pesticides, insecticides,
mhm,
indiscriminate usage. Like if you take cabbage, for example,
mhm,
or even a rose. I was talking to my friend who runs a nursery here, and I was asking him, "Do you have rose plants?" He showed, "I do have a white rose plant." I said, don't you have red ones? Or he said, no, no, those are all fake roses. I said, fake rose? What is a fake rose? He said, now we have dyes. You just have to grow white rose. Whatever the customer asks, he would ask like, I need 100 or 500 red roses. You dip it in the dye and give it to them. Because someone asked for a black rose, where will I find a black rose? I have dye, I can generate any rose.
wow,
So all of these dyes and the agents that we come in contact with, they are potential sources of so many contaminants.
that's
For example, everything from the plastic we wrap around the food to the thermal paper receipts we get, or the containers where we store our food, the packaging, the paints, adhesives we use, all of them are potential sources of so many things.
toxins.
And it has been in the food chain. Now interestingly, it is not just us, it is in the entire food chain. So there is a cumulative toxicity because of that. And many a times when I talk to patients, they say, I don't think I want to test this B12 that you have advised because I eat a lot of
Hmm.
meat and I perhaps get enough of it. But I've seen that even in hardcore non-vegetarian eating patients, there is a lot of B12 deficiencies because there is a problem with methylation. The body cannot use certain forms of vitamins and minerals. Until we test, we will never know. So there are potentially so many sources, and even the underground water table. Uh, so previously, we used to say that it is completely safe underground water because it is pure and all of that. Now, in many parts of major metropolitan cities in India, I was reading the report of how they found traces of heavy metals and stuff there
No.
because of so much of, yeah.
Wow. So yeah, that sounds crazy. Like, like everything we're consuming from a which we think is a normal, been normal like past 20, like growing up, but it's 30 years and like whole history we have been eating, and now it's everyday things like water and basic food.
Yeah,
I was really shocked when you said about your friend's nursery and the roses red. So we should be careful because whenever we see rose, we want to hold and inhale and feel
exactly.
the fragrance, and we never know we're inhaling just the toxins now,
True,
and
very true. I mean, even in Bangalore, I read reports when they randomly did a testing of organic fruits and vegetables which were sold in organic markets.
Mhm.
They found extremely high, amounts of heavy metals in that. So
Exactly.
the concept of it is also a hype of organic
Exactly.
products because it says that whatever the government brands as chemical agents, that is not allowed, but there are also allowed agents, like things which are possibly toxic, which it doesn't say that anything about. So
Mhm.
it says that, okay, whatever the government is saying, maybe lead, mercury, all those 5 10 things, that is below the detection limits, so it is organic,
Mhm.
certified, and I can use it. But it is not guaranteeing that it is free from every possible chemical
Mhm.
on earth.
Mhm.
Like many found copper sulfate and stuff like that from
Yeah.
fruits and vegetables. So
Yeah.
it's a very gray area.
Yeah, that's the question I had in mind. The organic food in India is how much organic? And it's not at all, right? So, I mean, the brands like Organic Tattva or Organic India or Pure and Sure and or these conscious food, I don't know. So even now the mainstream like Amul and all those have started making stuff organic, which so I'm
Yeah,
having
I think.
doubting, right? So
Yeah, I mean, the problem is what they think or brand as organic is very important. So it is a certification agency looks at certain parameters and say that if the levels of the chemicals which I think are toxic are below the limits, then it can be certified by our agency.
mhm,
It is, that's what it's saying. So all these companies look forward to producing or sourcing them from a place where these things are not extremely high in amounts or in the limits. But it cannot guarantee every possible chemical. um, and that is the biggest problem that we have. Like if you think white rice and brown rice, which one do you think is healthy?
brown rice.
uh, but brown rice has high levels of certain heavy metals compared to white rice,
Okay.
right? So in the process of removing it, polishing and all that stuff, some of it gets
Mm-hmm.
out, and then the levels come down. So it is a very, the concept itself is flawed, I feel, because what is good eating, as long as you grow your own vegetables,
Okay.
and or you trust a farmer or a place where it is grown, it's given enough time, seasonally grown,
Mm-hmm.
they are not
Yeah.
hiding. And the best way to also, I mean, many of my patients make a joke telling that, if you go to a supermarket and look at the fruits and vegetables, go to the shelf which isn't very much pleasing to you. And if
Mm-hmm.
it looks so good to be,
Don't buy.
yeah, it can't be. So there is some problem in that. And with the growing amounts of different toxins that are used as alternatives to the classical pesticide and insecticide chemicals, we don't know their effect. Just like xylitol, erythritol, and many other things, stevia, we don't have a long-term study on how it affects microbiome. We only know whether it spikes the blood sugar or not. Similarly, all these alternatives used for farming, we don't know their long-term impact on human health. Plus, as a species, we are losing the robustness in detoxifying
Mm-hmm.
things because of the epigenetic influencers. So both of them are going to pose a big challenge in the long run.
Yeah, that that is very like brings a lot of helplessness and like a sense of confuse what to do, like like sort of like what to eat, what should we eat, like even if we know some things are subjective, right? Like
Yeah,
to people what some foods would be good for some would be, even though we are able to realize that there has been a years of nutritional deficiency. So for someone, let's say for 20, 30 years, they have not eaten a healthy diet, and they've not eaten, they've lived in a near industrial town, or had lived in a place which had a not recently strong air pollution. Let's say Delhi's India is just now, I think more in North India is like, and maybe other parts of Europe as well, some parts, but in India the air pollution is uh so toxic, I think. I don't know, apart from water, I mean we're talking of basics here, water, food, and now we talk air also, like I mean just because of so much industrials and crop burning and automobile in sort of, so living in those year, and one thing is that we're realizing, okay, all these are not just causing nutritional deficiency, they're also adding to toxins which our body is trying to create to survive. Now, as a healing modality or as a cure, we cannot just depend on diet then, because our diet, the kind of diet we take, to one is that you detox, you clear up, and what the other is you fill up, right? You fill it, you nourish it. So maybe we can go into the detox and nourishing. How do you really take out these things? And how, and when we talk about nourishing, what do we really nourish with? Like, diets are just if we just want to have organic stuff, organic meat, we don't know how much organic they are. I don't know if there's a way to test them at home, or just, I mean, like the suggestion your friend makes is, I mean, it's what looks good on eyes, So I is may not be eyes. So like I was, I would. There's this one dialogue I always remember from this film, Lapata Ladies. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a Bollywood. There's a beggar in the railway station who's begging whole day, and
Mm-hmm.
he's handicapped, and then at night when he comes to sleep in his room, he takes off his stick. But he's actually not handicapped.
Yeah, not
So,
yeah, yeah.
and then the guy says to the person, like, jo dikhta hai wo hota nahi hai. What you see is, it's not true, and what you don't see is always sometimes true, right? So that's a good suggestion by your friend. And but yeah, so we live in that sense of double layered word. And yeah, so yeah, how does one sort of move into that, sort of detoxing and nourishing spaces? Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, I would say that uh, thorough cleaning for residual matter is very important for reducing the toxic burden. So before we detoxify, we also have to think of how do we reduce exposure, because they both collectively give the result and not individually. So using saline solution, baking soda before you even peel the veggies or fruits, washing them thoroughly, and then in running water, remove surface residues considerably, though not 100% again. Because if you cut and peel, then wash it, then you might even take the surface materials in, and then probably stuffing it in. So that's one thing. And the second I would say is the at every level thinking of safer options, like using a wooden or a stainless steel chopping board. Storing containers should be glass preferably, or stainless steel. So it is mostly the preventive strategies which I say to patients to
Mhm.
take care of first. Next would be the the chain of storage, especially when it comes to meat. It's difficult to know the conditions in which the animal was, till it came to the market, because its physiological condition, how active it was, whether it was just bound to a cage, all of them matter. And we don't have a control on that. What we have is only looking at who is at least having safe practices in terms of getting it to your home, and that chain should not be contaminated. Contamination is the only thing we look at. There will be antibiotic residues, there will be hormonal residues, there will be environmental contaminants, how clean the slaughterhouse was, all of them.
Mhm.
And there will be some chemicals which build up over time, and also that can be problematic. It will not be, because every minute after it is dead, it is going to decompose, and the degree might vary, and the conditions in which it is stored will determine how it is degraded. But it depends on that condition as well. So uh, choosing a safer place, and looking at the types of fishes, for example, is low mercury fish. So thinking of whether this is the best choice or not, I would have a healthy shopping cart that we usually give to patients, which says what is a healthy option if it is fish, what do you choose? If it is meat, go for lean cuts. So there are things in which you can look at, and there are, vegetable, there are fruits, the dirty five we call, which have the most pesticide
Nutrients.
residue. Yeah. So looking at those aspects, safer practices to clean it is one thing. Second is we do testing. It could be tests based on blood, urine, and hair,
Mhm,
and using appropriate agents to chelate those
mhm,
elements. It can be, I use botanical agents and binders like bentonite,
mhm,
citrus pectin, activated charcoal, or things
mhm,
like that. But if they have access to, they, and if there is a holistic practitioner interested and open minded to do an IV, they can also do that
mhm.
to
What
reduce the
is
toxic burden.
what is IV?
Like intravenous
Okay.
administration of the chelating agents.
Okay.
And most importantly, if I see a lot of toxins, I would do a methylation panel. Methylation panel is a blood test
Mhm,
which will help in detecting how good is a person's detoxification capability. It
mhm,
gives also other information related to neurotransmitters, which will
mhm,
be the subject of our discussion. But it also gives an idea of whether the individual has a challenged detoxification pathway. If that is the case, I would advise them to use some detoxification support in terms of supplements like N-acetylcysteine, glutathione, vitamin C, and stuff. So knowing the level of trace elements or minerals, because the body's first response, the first defense response will be from antioxidant stores. Hey guys, come and help me. Like, there will be selenium, vitamin C, all of these stuff. They'll come to picture and help to detoxify the body. And if those levels are low, then I would definitely think that the pathway is challenged. Either the diet is very restrictive, or there is a lot of toxins the body is fighting, and we need to work on those. So I think testing will be very crucial in
okay.
these
Yeah,
aspects.
to figure out what needs to be detoxed and what needs to be nourished, the testing is very vital. But it's also like there's one thing that is accumulated and the other is just in ongoing in the present, because it's not that the present food and the diet like organic we have is nourishing. The
Yeah.
the present is also adding continuously and is also cumulative. So it also like brings me maybe to this questions around understanding, let's say, schizophrenia or just a severe challenge. Like, what do you feel? Which one is more toxic? Sense of who has more toxic in their body, a person with cancer or a person with schizophrenia? I mean, you know,
Ah, that's a difficult
difficult
question,
question.
neat
Sorry,
level question.
sorry.
Yeah, so I would say in neuropsychiatric problems, there is considerably high amount. In cancer, there'll be specific things the person is exposed to
Mhm,
repeatedly. For example, there is a possibility of an industrial pollutant, or an exhaust, or someone working at a factory, and they are
mhm,
exposed on a daily basis to
mhm,
inks or dyes, or something of that sort. And there is a cumulative toxicity, and that is specifically processed and eliminated in a particular organ, possibly liver, let's say, for example.
mhm,
Or there is exposure of nicotine regular basis for years and years, the person develops lung cancer or oral cancer.
yeah,
So there is a lot of exposure to one or two specific things for a long time there, whereas here there will be lot of toxins in the body, may not be specific, maybe, but there will be usually multiple here. And in both the situations, there is definitely a genetic predisposition. Even if there is no genetic predisposition, there can be what we call genetic SNPs, or single nucleotide polymorphisms. Like I said, there will be a mistake, and that mistake will be
a
just
problem.
photocopied across, and the body fails to correct it,
Mhm,
and that might be a problem in both the cases. um,
okay.
yeah.
So, um, is it true that so I was reading about so Abraham Hofner's protocol, like in orthomolecular psychiatry, and there's a just a book around how to, healing schizophrenia around that. So there was some mention around that people who have cancer, sorry, the people who have schizophrenia will not have cancer in their ever in their future, as if schizophrenia is like an evolutionary disease that builds up something in the body that is um is resistant to cancer. So is it like somebody who has schizophrenia will not ever develop cancer? And I don't know if it's a vice versa, but I don't know if you have any opinions or thoughts on it, or it's just like they had no, sense that, yeah.
Um, I don't think so. I have seen patients with uh,
Okay.
cancer who have developed schizophrenia and schizoaffective
Mm-hmm.
symptoms, and vice versa as well. But there may be a degree of what we call as a predisposition that can
Mm-hmm.
differ from a individual who just has neuropsychiatric problems or psychiatric disorders
Yeah.
versus the one who had cancer. And mostly because I do see a variation in the pathways that we see, what we call as the key pathways in schizophrenia. For example, we talk about um, dopamine variation, whether there is a problem with the metabolism of it, or whether there is a receptor problem, whether there is upregulation, downregulation, leading to what we call positive or negative symptoms. So we only talk about these functional aspects here. There may not be a major structural problem that we see, whereas in cancer we do see structural problems because it comes with a lot of immunological markers involved, which causes neuroinflammation. So we do see um, you know problems where it causes not just functional but in the long run structural deformity to the brain. Then cause extrapyramidal symptoms in serious situations.
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I do see that both have their own sense of, you know, ways, because as if if schizophrenia is like a waking nightmare, cancerous is almost, deadly. That shortens your lifespan. Very like it's so both of them have perhaps their own challenges and very strong struggles around it. Yeah. So when you say that you worked with client who developed, let's say, who have schizoaffective, how do you approach working in terms of neurotransmitters? So neurotransmitters, do you work in a sense with the dopamine there? And Yeah, how do you approach? What is the, you know, is there sometimes there's a genetic basis to it, sometimes not, and is for example, is mercury more in people with schizophrenia or more than others? And how do you approach, for example, the clients you worked with who have schizophrenia and schizoaffective, how do you see
Yeah. So, like I said, first thing that I would do is I would go with
testing?
the gut health and check, because many of these dopamine dysregulation, dopamine and serotonin related problems, both of them, I've seen there is a clear microbiome related challenges that they have. So, irrespective of their symptom, I would first check the gut health. There is gut related inflammation, there is microbiome related problems, and then whether there is digestive enzyme related problem. Because if, say, the person is taking, for example, a proton pump inhibitor, I'm taking pantoprazole, doctor, for the past 2 years because I have a lot of acid reflux. Well, that's good, but
Mhm.
good to know. But you will also have a predisposition of B vitamin deficiency if you are not supplementing, because pantoprazole might inhibit the proton pump needed for B
Okay.
vitamin absorption. And B vitamin, B12 especially, is very much involved in the pathway of methylation needed in producing or modulating NMDA receptors and also dopamine pathway. So uh, we got a clue there. I'll probe more into B12 levels, how is he doing, and stuff like that. So we'll catch one of the key aspects from the symptoms the patient says, and then get into more testing to understand what is the biochemical basis. I would do mostly a complete blood panel just to see whether there are macro or micronutrient deficiencies. That would be the base level. Also include zinc, vitamin D, and all of that. The second level testing I would do is the gut microbiome testing to see what's the healthy microbiome like and what unhealthy organisms we see. Next, I would check for mitochondrial markers and neuroinflammatory markers like interleukin, cytokines. We do the whole panel, and because there should be something which is driving these symptoms. Otherwise, nobody will be born schizoaffective, something like that,
Yeah.
right? So, what is the driving force that is, taking the patient through all of this?
Yeah.
And and we do these tests one by one. That's another problem. Patients say, do all the tests you want, start the treatment. That is not how it's going to work, because if I see there is a lot of mineral deficiencies and stuff, and also there is a lot of heavy metal toxicity, I cannot do a heavy metal chelation because that would deplete the body of more minerals. So we do one and then check other, go to the next step. And uh, I would say more than 50-60% of patients are patient enough
Mm-hmm.
to go through the process, and the rest will feel that it's a very laborious process,
Yeah.
and maybe we are shooting in the dark. There should
Yeah.
be something like a um,
Like, yeah, not very,
bullseye.
yeah, bullseye. Not so clear. I just, yeah.
That is not how it's going to work, because see, if someone has a methylation problem and say that, for example, I never realized that I have a methylation problem, I would you know exhibit certain traits of OCD since my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have, if somebody asks me, hey, how do I reach your house? I'm at the bus stop. It is extremely difficult, from though I'm living here from the past 20-22 years. I cannot direct them. If they ask me, I can go and pick them and drive them to my house. But that mental mapping is very difficult for me. And there are certain aspects which I feel that I have a tendency for OCD. And then I thought, okay, is there a methylation related issue? That am I under methylating? Is there some problem? And then
Yeah.
when we do testing, it shows up.
Shows up.
The tests can't lie. Right?
Mhm.
So the neuroinflammation which is causing the symptoms, it is driving the patient to do certain things, behave in a certain way. And all of those, what we call the positive symptoms of overthinking, hallucinations, or
Hearing
paranoid thoughts.
voices. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is some problem. So what is that which is causing? Because we cannot just down the dopamine. Is it a conversion problem? Because the dopamine then goes through the catecholamine pathway.
Mhm.
So is there a bottleneck there, or is the enzyme problematic? Because if we correct the enzyme, dopamine then starts coming down on its own. But if you down regulate it, there
Mhm.
will also be the catecholamine deficiency. So we'll be creating more problems to the patient, taking them into more anxious episodes,
Yeah.
which will not help. So it is always the core aspects that we have to check for,
Yeah.
from deficiencies, and then microbiome, toxins, neurotransmitters, and also sleep and work,
Mhm.
which we overlook. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see many practitioners
Mhm.
asking the patient, "What's your work like?
Mhm.
What's your work schedule? How is, are you getting enough rest?
Mhm.
What's the sleep time?
Mhm. Yeah.
What time do you wake up? Let's correct the sleep wake cycle. Let's practice a sleep hygiene." It is all very, very important.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I think there's something around circadian rhythm there, which
Correct.
is like, which I mean, this, yeah, it's like the quality of sleep and the and able to go into the deep states or not. And I think a lot of people who have struggled, suffering, struggle to have actually proper sort of rest and challenge to really, really, rest
Recover. Yeah.
and recover and stop. And I was also kind of thinking how it's like, first, so someone, let's so sleep, and of course the quality of work a person is able to sort of function, be able to, it does, it add value to their life, or it adds more stress to them. So of course these are very strong parameters as well. I think it's very good. I was thinking that, so does it happen that person who's going through this kind of sort of healing and trying to understand collaboratively, like, does it also make them worse in the beginning or for a long time as they're going through, like I mean, because there's no quick solution to it, right? And when they're trying to, for example, like you said about one of your client who was consuming all kind of toxins in India, but went to America, became worse, right? And I was wondering, he became worse because actually the symptoms showed up, and it's a pathway to get healed. So first you get sick, more sick. Actually, sometimes people may stop coming for help and says, oh, one is that, yeah, it's not hitting the bullseye, it's too much and it's very laborious, but it's also like it makes them sick, more sick, and more hearing voices like for a while. The symptoms actually increases for a while. That is more like a, because the toxins are releasing, or because or
Yeah. I think I would like to answer this with two perspectives. One is the aspect of healing where, for example, let's say we discovered that there are lots of toxins, heavy metals and stuff in the body,
Mhm,
or maybe there is overgrowth of bacteria or even gut-based fungal overgrowth, and we want to treat it.
mhm,
So we do use chelation agents which bring the toxins out, or agents to kill these microbes which we don't want, and they die.
mhm,
But when these things happen, there is a lot of circulating toxins available now. It is going through the brain. Many of them can cross the blood-brain barrier. Some of the symptoms are going to be worsening. There'll be exacerbation of some symptoms because now, despite the use of binders and best possible things, there will be some flare-ups in the healing phase.
yeah.
The second, when these organisms die, when we do a gut cleanse, they will burst open, release, the lysosomes and everything. And even though we use binders, some of it can enter the blood through enterohepatic circulation.
Mhm,
So that is called a die-off reaction. And many patients say that, "Oh, doctor, my insomnia got worse. I thought I'm going to be helped by your product."
yes.
Yeah, have patience, because in this phase you are bound to see these changes, because it is not a magic. And when the body is losing maybe certain million organisms in the gut with the cleanse program, you are bound to see some change. It is not a comfortable feeling for the body.
Mhm,
And the second thing which you rightly said is metacognition, where patients can just be depressed and sitting, just feeling hopeless, helpless.
yeah.
And then the cognition of, or the realization of, oh, I am feeling this, is actually a realization. That's actually the first step in
Mhm,
healing, right? If
mhm,
you are not even aware of the problem that is you are going through, then you cannot find a solution. So becoming aware of that thought process, especially in psychiatric problems, is
yeah.
the first step. And I would say that is a good thing, because you are now becoming uh,
Aware.
yeah, you're becoming aware of it. And then if the more you become aware, the faster you will be able to switch your thought process and come to the present moment.
Mhm.
That is the most important part in the healing process.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's a very complementing or integrated, like integrating certain space like therapy. So it happens like most some of the clients I work with, of course, they have some struggles and in therapy and functional struggles. But when we try to sit and we realize that, oh, there's a lot of feelings, sadness, a lot of anger, and those were not there. And I think when we begin to sort of get in touch with those feelings and acknowledge, oh, that there is a suicidalness, and I think just the awareness. Sometimes client feel like, oh, you're making me feel sad, and this was not there, but it's just that there was not in awareness before. So so what I also hear, that along with having a these a functional approach to it, functional medicine complementing, it's like with therapy space where a person gets to become more aware process of what. So at one level there are flares up happening, and there's a process happening in functional medicine, and then the therapeutic space becomes a space for person to acknowledge the emotional layer, especially in the developmental neuro disorders, that psychological disorders, that becomes a space to, okay, what's coming up at emotional layer now. This 6 months of sadness and suicidalness coming, or something from the childhood trauma is coming up now, or through, because sometimes the perhaps the treatment, certain minerals, certain modalities also activate certain kind of, so something in the body, and then it's sort of like related to the emotional life. and the psychological life that can be addressed in therapy. So it's more like complementing each other. I think the awareness of emotions, awareness of the mental state, as you said, it seems like really, really important. It's because it's just also about how person thinks and feels. So
Yeah.
um, I think it's important to realize that it's just working with psychological disorders, like it requires like a family, like requires a community, requires a village, like
It's,
not just one kind of
yeah,
approach. And
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It start. I think it has to be. I would say everyone in their community um, should be understanding. From the doctor to family and friends and therapists to everyone. They realize, you know, and also give a positive reinforcement.
Mhm,
Yeah, you said rightly that it takes like a village, because you are literally relearning everything, because there will also be a lot of conditioning and indoctrinated ideological things.
mhm,
All of them you have to challenge to be able to heal many a times. And it's going to be like killing your old self and bringing your new self out. And when that happens, you're literally like a newborn child, and
mhm.
it definitely takes a village to
To
bring that child.
Yeah, exactly. You're just it's beautifully you put, like reborn. It's like a individuation process. I think if we sort of look at it through like, like more psychological frameworks in Jungian, like this is like, okay, you because also because the schizophrenia is also sometimes a sort of a struggle at a very basic level, like at an infant level, like the core is so and so sort of like a person healing from that is sort of going back to those early kind of very which is very cumulative, and then restructuring there and like detoxing and stuff, and but then the birth also happens, and then it's almost like growing up again in your emotional life. So it's like a
Exactly.
so so it's like sometimes it's like a reborn is like a perhaps for some people maybe like born as a like a again feeling like an infant, like a baby in this whole world, and walk, and then you need a village again to like raise that baby, like and meet both all kinds of new needs, like emotional, cognitive, and nutritional, and a community belonging, playing, and cultural. So it's impressive how we look at it, like in terms of as a village to raise people with such. So unlike like how it is a popular conception right now, because a lot of people with such struggles feel very abandoned and very sort of stigmatized in sort of places like works and stuff. So contrary to that, I think if there's more culture of sort of like care and warmth, I think the way you approach I think your clients and your work, it's people feel very respected, and they don't feel very discarded, unlike meeting even very good intended doctors, even let's say psychiatrists or even homeopathy, lots of even alternatives. There's a serious lack of sort of just a warmth and respect. you know there's a distance these professionals tend to make, even therapists, even counselors. So when they see, okay, you have such severe, so it's very, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Because when I work with these families who have neuro developmental problems, and they do come for consultations, of course, everybody talks about, oh, the child can't walk, talk, or whatever. I feel pity, we show sympathy and all that stuff. But honestly, the child will be getting all their needs met by their parents and caregivers. The child will be taken care of. They'll get timely meals, everything.
Mhm.
They'll be taken care of for sure. But when I ask the parents, how are you guys doing,
Yeah.
many times they just tear up, because when they go to a maybe pediatric neurologist, or when they go to talk to a psychiatrist, I doubt if they even ask the parents, how are you,
Yeah.
are you even alive? So it is mostly like, and I see them how they feel in just like 1 or 2 years of that consultation. When I look at them, it feels like they've aged like 10 or 15 years already. And that is a very profound realization I had,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, what about the parents, who is going to, who are going to ask them how
Yeah,
you are.
yeah,
uh,
yeah. They have this is very profound. I can feel this intensely in this moment with you, like this effect of this such invisibility that they're going. There's such carrying such heaviness in them about the helplessness around navigating these systems and don't clueless about what's really working and and a lot of challenges like social challenges, or if your child is different, you how you may not be able to fit in with a normal sense of families. Your children cannot play with your others children, and there's certain isolation comes already. And apart from just the caregivers burnout that you have to
yeah,
attend more deeply, you cannot work as like you cannot leave your kid. You need more resources and as a caregiver to support. And so I really appreciate your realization when you talk to parents. Perhaps you bring in sense of support to them, because indirectly that's also affecting the child. I mean, consciously or unconsciously, but in care. But of course, they also have their own journey and life. I mean that's beautiful what you
yeah.
shared.
I think it is the feeling of being heard,
Hmm.
because many times when they write feedback and say, um, it's not much of therapeutic things, because of course we do, want to bring medical, improvement, clinical improvement from a medical standpoint. That is one thing for sure. But the second thing is, oh doctor, we felt heard.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is going to make me happy, because seeing a drop in the level of something on paper in the
Yeah.
lab report. I mean, parents can just go to chat gpt and say, what does a highlight mean, something like that. So we now have access to everything,
Hmm.
information is abundantly available. But that human touch and,
Exactly.
yeah,
That relationship is so important. That sometimes is more, sometimes adding, or maybe it's more stronger healing than of course others are, but it also adds so much to feeling belong. And yeah, and sense of like feeling like, okay, gives you hope, so much hope that okay, this, and respect. So I feel that, yeah, I mean, that's the question I think comes out in like most practitioners, like why people would want to go and to places where there's a space to be heard, and then engage with knowledge. Otherwise we have so much strong AI models in Google. So
yeah,
this is why do we even need to, and I think that's why
yeah.
a lot of people prohibit going to doctors and especially
Me
psychiatrists.
too. Yes, yes, because I think, there is a bit of fragmented approach with
Mhm.
reductionist approach of, I feel really hopeless, doctor. Oh, I'm not going to talk about it. Go to a counselor.
Yeah.
I'm just going to write medicine. And I also possibly have, you know, my skin feels dry. I have extreme constipation. Do I have thyroid problems? You go and meet as an
Exactly.
endocrinologist. I won't talk. So it's like running from one person to another just to talk bits of how I'm feeling.
Hmm.
That is, I don't think that is sustainable. You would want to sit and talk to one person about everything you feel,
Yeah.
and then maybe figure out ways how we can address.
Yeah, yeah, and once a relationship is more established and sense of safety, then they can things flow out. We can add more people, and
Yeah,
but not just a very short and because that expresses like a repulsion, that expresses like a sense of rejection, sense of like a fragmentation, like you said, which is more sort of dividing and splitting then. And I think in certainly like people with schizophrenia, there's like strong splitting. They're wanting to have a sense of wholeness, like wholeness, like in the sense like because the challenge is such a primary. So imagine a baby for whom the mother is the word, right? The mother is the whole. I mean, the baby doesn't know anybody, anything, just so baby just the mother is the whole, the one, the wholeness. So So it's also like for a person with such, let's say, schizophrenia wants to re-experience that wholeness, where not just the trauma can be felt, but also like the rebirth can happen from that wholeness and not being dropped. And since there's no perfect mother, there's no perfect, I think, doctor. There's
Yeah,
like
that's
there's
true.
a there's a good enough, like there's a psychologist Winnicott, he calls a good enough mother, which is allows a person to grow up with certain healthy capacities, certain way of life, which is has can appreciate quality of life, can have a can have empathy towards others, and is open, have authenticity. So yeah, I mean that's probably no practitioner perhaps is perfect. I mean they also, no parents are perfect too. I
Yeah,
mean they might struggle. Yeah.
that's
So
true.
yeah. Yeah, so I feel we really had beautiful conversations and we touched on. I think I would just ask few questions, maybe to sort of to bring to closure, like just maybe short questions or however you want to express, or things like, for example, we talked about antibiotics a lot and how they cause sort of like cumulative, sometimes
Mhm.
irreversible. So I wanted to know your opinion about antipsychotics or maybe other antidepressants, or your opinion, as much as they're helping a person in managing sometimes, uh or maybe, so what are your views on antipsychotic or antidepressants? And secondly, uh do they also add toxicity like how antibiotics do in our body?
Very good question. So I think there will be challenges because dopamine, if we just take about dopamine as a neurotransmitter, it takes care of so many things in the body, other than thought process and stuff. It uh, it plays an important role in many of physiological functions, and we selectively inhibit dopamine receptors, or we block it or we amplify it. All those functions will also be affected, though we have mostly selective agents now, but it is still not, like we said, it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So we do see key challenges, like possible extrapyramidal symptoms, or weight related or metabolic challenges that they come with. And it's not an irreversible thing, it is a reversible thing. But because of these challenges, if the body's physiology becomes so much altered, then to the extent of causing a major challenge to the pancreas, for example, for diabetes, or a movement disorder, something like that, then that is possibly a challenging case to reverse. So what we usually do is to add supportive therapies from Ayurveda and other systems, along with the medications. So they act like adjuvants, and they help in getting sustainable results with the agent, pharmacological agent, with the minimal effective dose. While all of these agents that we use, nutraceuticals and therapies, Ayurveda therapies, to support them, minimize the challenging effects or challenges that comes with these medications, and thereby their tolerance and compliance can be better. That is the best possible thing that we can do.
Yeah, that makes sense, to sort of soften their load on the body, to reduce the sort of sense. That's more like a very wholesome approach rather than pushing one thing to another. Okay, great. So my next question is that how so what gives you hope, like in in your work, in your life? What drive makes you hopeful about, because of our lives and our times we live? Like like when you
So
wake.
I think two aspects. One is every day I wake up and just see what's the best contribution I can do today, to my body and to the work I'm doing. It can be, my profession, for example. So taking care of ourselves to take care of others is the best way to build hope. Because if I am feeling like a crap, I am not helping myself, then I think, I mean, I have been through tough days, and I felt that I don't feel it morally right and even possible for me to tell to a patient um, that everything is going to be okay
Yeah.
when I am not feeling the same way. Because I was talking about how processed carbohydrates can affect brain health in a
Mhm,
child with ADHD. In the break time, I was offered a jalebi,
mhm.
and I was eating it. One of the parents walked to me and she said, "Hi, doc. You said interesting things, but do you also practice some of what you speak?" I said, "Yeah, but you are eating sugars." That moment I realized, oh, this is a great thing. If I am eating lots of sugar and I'm telling the patient not to, like I'm smoking and telling the patient you should not, that isn't the right thing. And then I said to myself, and even in my team, which I head at Philadelphia, whoever gets admitted to the Department of Health, I'll tell them, you go added sugar, a diet free from added sugars,
Mhm,
zero processed foods,
mhm,
dairy free and gluten free, each for 15 days. I want you to feel,
mhm.
I want you to know how it feels. Because if you don't understand how it feels, you cannot tell the parent that, because many a times in this withdrawal phase they'll go through really tough time. The child will be screaming if they go out, the child will run and snatch a bar from another child, or just grab the ice cream the other child is eating and just eat it because the child is not getting. You, if you just say discipline your child, that doesn't make sense. Do you know what sugar cravings are? You should know. So go through this and you should know how it feels. So
Yeah.
am I doing the right thing for my body? I should work out, I should eat healthy, and I should be responsible for my body and my health, my actions. And the second thing, have I given my best for the patients today? Whether they improved or not is secondary. Did I do the best thing? Could I have done better?
Yeah.
I think both of them makes me feel that okay, I did my best, and I can be hopeful that tomorrow may be even better.
Yes. That's beautiful. That just bringing more attention to first yourself. Like I need to care for myself. Then from there, you know, uh, others. So it's also like so I have like two anecdotes coming to my mind right now. One is that like so it's like one is that in a recent like the protest happening in Delhi in Jantar Mantar around this which happened very successfully around it, and when it was building up, I think there was an actor Prakash Raj, he was there. So everybody's asking, why are you here? And he said, I'm not here for everyone. I'm here firstly, primarily, I'm here for myself because I live in a bungalow and I have a very pleasant life. But I, if I can't face myself in the mirror, because so he said he came for himself first and
Yeah,
then others. So it's like, he was like, so that's one, that's like if we start from ourselves, like then we extend it to others in the process. And
that's
I
true.
think and then I also remember about how I think there's a story about how there was a saint, and there's a person comes to that saint and says, I have a sugar craving, I cannot get rid of the sugar, what do I do? And then the saint says, okay, come back after 2 weeks, I will tell you the solution. And then this person comes back after 2 weeks, then the saint says, okay, come back another 2 weeks later. And then so it goes on, I think, I don't know how repeatedly, or like 4 weeks, 7, or even 6 months. Then after 6 months, the person say, I'm just tired, why are you calling, you've just postponing and come asking me again and again. Then the saint says, actually, uh how can I give you solution if I have such a sugar craving? So all these months I've been trying to get, rid of it, or just stop it. Only then I can help you out. So that's why
Yeah,
I've been asking you to come. And now that I've somehow after 6 months come not so craving, so now I can tell you a bit more about it. So it's like the story
that's,
about, like, how you can just work with someone. So it's kind of really beautiful that
yeah.
you would like to, and it's hopeful that nobody's perfect actually.
Nobody's, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and yeah, I think it's a so one of the probably good ways where we can just, bring it pause. Is there anything else you feel we've left out and you would like to share that we
Uh, no, I think we pretty much covered different aspects around mental health challenges, and as a medical professional,
Mhm,
how to approach it, and if at all there is like community support or something of that sort, I'm happy to be a part of it and
mhm,
help as many people as possible,
mhm. Sure, sure. That
answer questions or anything, like a platform where the patients have a question and they want an answer, and
mhm, mhm.
anything that can be helpful.
Yeah, sure, sure. That's brilliant because we would like to invite you. I mean, we have a weekly support group. We've been there are people with schizophrenia and so lived experiences, peer and support, and we meet like once a week, and we've almost met like 9, 10 times, and we so they're like group of 4 or 5 people, and we come and we're engaging about schizophrenia, and we are planning to invite people. So we would really like to perhaps, I'll check in with the group and and write back. Maybe we'd like to invite you for maybe one time and sort of,
Sure.
and everyone can engage and learn so much from
Yeah,
just
there'll be a lot of learning, both for
exactly.
me and for, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I really appreciate that your time, your effort, your energy, and the work you're doing.